Let's start this off with Jordan Montgomery heading to the Braves. I've talked about this idea before, and I still think it makes a lot of sense. Montgomery signed with the Diamondbacks last offseason after holding out late into spring training, and it turned out to be a disaster. 25 games, 21 starts, ERA at a 6.23, FIP at a 4.4. So bad he was moved to the bullpen at one point. The owner of the Diamondbacks, Ken Kendrick, came out a little earlier this offseason and said he basically regretted the signing. And when you take a look at the Diamondbacks rotation, you signed Corbin Burns. You have a lot of starting pitching at this point. You got some young guys down in the minor leagues that could come up and contribute to help out at the back end of the rotation. So I think at this point, there's no reason to keep Montgomery on your payroll. I say move him, and I think the Braves would be a great landing spot. Remember, they brought in Chris Sale last offseason from the Red Sox, and they got a Cy Young season out of him. Reynaldo Lopez, this was a guy that was going back and forth between the rotation and the bullpen throughout his career, and they got a breakout year out of him. You know, Schwellenbach was great this past year. Strider, he's coming back from elbow surgery. So I think a veteran like Montgomery would be a nice addition for this rotation, just to give them a bit more insurance. You do got some young guys coming up from the minor leagues, but hey, I say bring in Montgomery, try to get him back to what he was doing just a couple of years ago, and there could be a lot of upside to this and give the Braves yet another pitcher in this rotation that could be valuable. So the trade I have is Montgomery and some cash to make up the difference for the underwater contract. And for the Diamondbacks, they just get a fringe prospect in Raven Antonio. As of right now, he is the number 30 prospect in their system on Baseball America. You know, a guy that has a few pitches. Well, he has a 4-pitch mix, a couple of fastballs, slider, changeup. He throws a decent amount of strikes, so maybe they could get a little bit more out of him. But in the end, I think Montgomery for the Braves just makes a lot of sense. Speaking of the Red Sox, I have Nolan Arenado heading to Boston. Now, I've talked about this idea on this channel before too, and I still think it makes sense. I'd rather the Red Sox just go after Alex Bregman. You're not having to trade away any players in that scenario. But if they don't want to spend the money that it takes to land him, I think Arenado would be a good fallback option. He's only got 3 more years left on his contract, and he is going to be cheaper than Alex Bregman. Now, the main talking point with Arenado as of late is that he's basically about to turn 60 years old. The bat's regressing, and sure, the power has come down over the last couple of years. A 394 slugging this past year. When you take a look at the batted ball metrics, yeah, you got some blues here. But Arenado did make some mechanical adjustments this past year, and in the final month of the season, he actually ranked 67th out of 167 qualified players in hard hit percentage. So I think he takes that into this offseason, into spring training, and I think you end up seeing a better Arenado next year, especially at Fenway Park. I mean, look at all the gray outs that you have here. They're at least going to be going off the green monster at that point. Maybe even a couple of them go over. So I think the ballpark fits him well at this point. I think he ends up being a pretty solid hitter at Fenway Park. And you know you're going to get better defense at third base. Rafael Devers, we all love the bat, but defensively, he hasn't been very good. So I say you move Devers to DH. You know, what do you do with Masataka Yoshida at that point? I don't know. You just figure it out when that time comes. But either way, Arenado is going to give you great defense. If Trevor Story stays healthy, that is an elite left side of the infield at third and shortstop. So the trade that I have is Arenado and cash, $15 million. That was the reported amount of money that was going to go back to the Astros before Arenado said no to that trade. So I got $15 million heading to the Red Sox. And back to the Cardinals, I got a couple of prospects. You got Blaze Jordan and Nazan Zenatello. Now, reportedly, these two names have come up in trade talks with the Red Sox and Cardinals. I have mentioned these two before in other videos and streams. I think it makes a lot of sense for these two guys to head back to the Cardinals. Now, as of right now in the Red Sox system, both guys have dipped a little outside the top 30 in the Red Sox system on Baseball America. Zenatello's at 31, Blaze Jordan is at 37, but both guys have a lot of upside, and both were drafted by Chaim Bloom, who is now with the Cardinals. Now, Zenatello, he's a possible 5-tool player down the road. He's got good power, speed. He's good defensively at shortstop. He just needs to work on the swing and miss. And we all know the deal with Blaze Jordan. A lot of power upside there. More likely a first baseman at this point, maybe a third baseman down the road. But either way, you know, I think both these guys heading back to the Cardinals makes a lot of sense. You know, the Red Sox, they're giving them some payroll relief here. The Cardinals get some possible upside, but it also, you know, gives them a little bit more outside of just payroll relief. It also lets the Cardinals get some of their younger players into the mix, like Nolan Gorman, like Sajay in there. So overall, I think it's a good deal for both sides. How about Spencer Torkelson heading to the Marlins? Now, Torkelson had a lot of hype coming out of the 2020 draft. Unfortunately, he just hasn't been able to put it together consistently at the major league level. Had over 30 home runs a couple of years ago, but this past year, he completely fell off a cliff. Hit 219, a 295 on base, a 374 slugging, and 92 WRC plus, 10 homers. He got sent back down to the minor leagues at one point. A terrible year for Torkelson, and unfortunately for him, a lot of the other young guys in the Tigers organization have stepped up. You got Colt Keith projected for first base at this point. I just don't see where Torkelson fits into the mix, but in Miami, they're very far away from competing. I think that's a low-key environment to where he can try and get himself back on track, and the Marlins have been looking for high upside bats over the last year. I think this could be a pretty nice fit, so a pretty simple trade overall. Torkelson going to the Marlins, back to the Tigers, a couple of pitching prospects that are a little bit lower in their system. You got Kaner Benitez and Jacob Miller. As of right now, Jacob Miller is number 27 and Benitez is number 25. Benitez has good velo, has good stuff. Just needs to work on the strike throwing, maybe add another pitch. And with Jacob Miller, more of a high floor kind of a guy, but he's got a good amount of pitches that he plays with. And I think both guys would be good for the Tigers organization. They got a great pitching lab running over there. Maybe they can get a bit more out of Jacob Miller. You know, maybe they could work something out here with Kaner Benitez where they can get a bit more potential out of him. Either way, I would love Torkelson to get a better chance somewhere to get his career on track. And for the Tigers, they get a couple of pitching prospects in return. Howdy, everyone. Just wanted to take a quick moment to shout out today's sponsor, and that's Factor. Factor Meals takes the stress out of meal planning and sets you up for success. You can skip the grocery stores, the prep work, and the cooking fatigue. And this is big for me considering I run this channel and I'm talking about the Red Sox over on Monster Territory with the Foul Territory Network now. So I need all the time I can get. You can get chef-crafted, dietitian-approved meals delivered right to your door with over 35 meals to choose from per week, including options like keto, calorie smart, vegan, veggie, and more. And I gotta be honest, this meal right here, the smoked Gouda and bacon shredded chicken hash, is absolutely wonderful, and it's got 29 grams of protein. So with that said, what are you waiting for? Head to factor75.com, or you can click the link below in the description. They gave us a great deal. Use the code 50HIDE to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first Factor box. That's code 50HIDE at factor75.com to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. I want to see Luis Robert head to the Blue Jays. Now, like I've said many times on this channel before with Robert, when he's healthy, this guy's electric. Had a great season a couple of years ago, 38 homers, 20 stolen bases, great defense in the outfield. The problem is he just can't stay on the field. This past year, had a hip flexor injury, threw his numbers all out of whack. Only hit 224, 278 on base, a 379 slugging, and 84 WRC plus. But like I said, when he's healthy, this guy can do great things. And I think the Blue Jays would be a great landing spot. They went hard after Pete Alonso. In the end, he ended up going back to the Mets. But why not go after Luis Robert here? Gives you another formidable bat in this lineup. You'd have Vlad, Santander, Luis Robert. My goodness. I mean, and Bo Bichette, if he bounces back, I mean, that'd be a great lineup overall. You know, and if Vlad Jr. ends up going elsewhere in free agency next year, then at least you have Luis Robert on a pretty team-friendly deal for the next few years. He does have a couple of club options, but hey, I think those could definitely be exercised. Now, the deal that I have is Robert heading to the Blue Jays, and back to the White Sox, we got a few prospects. Josh Kasevich, TJ Brock, and Jonathan Clase. Now, as of right now, Kasevich is the number 6 prospect in their system. Shortstop prospect. He's very solid, but the Blue Jays, they got Arjun Nimala coming up the pipe. They're very high on him, so maybe Kasevich can be expendable at this point. Like I said, just a pretty good all-around prospect. Not a ton of power, but maybe he can tap into some pop a little down the road. Has a very good hit tool, very disciplined at the plate. He's athletic as well, gives you good defense in the infield. I think Kasevich would be a really nice get for the White Sox. And, you know, they were talking with the Reds about Luis Robert. Edwin Arroyo came up in that deal, so that makes me think they could be looking for a high upside shortstop prospect. So I think Kasevich could fit the bill. A couple other prospects here. TJ Brock, pitching prospect down lower in their system, is number 28. And Jonathan Clase, very athletic, could have a pretty decent bat down the road. But overall, I think the White Sox, they get some upside here. And the Blue Jays, they get one more formidable bat for their lineup. Let's get back to some pitching and talk about Ryan Helsley. Helsley was absolutely dominant this past year. ERA at 2.04, FIP at 2.41, had over 10 strikeouts per nine, led the major leagues in saves with 49. I think he would be an amazing addition for the Rangers bullpen. Now, the Rangers, they went through a World Series hangover this past year, but I fully expect them to get back to their competitive ways. A lot of guys coming back from injury. They've also added a lot of guys to this bullpen, with the top addition being Chris Martin, but Chris Martin could be a setup guy. Helsley would be the shutdown closer that they need. I think this would be an amazing addition. Now, the trade that I have is Helsley going to the Rangers and back to the Cardinals. A couple of prospects, Alejandro Osuna, outfield prospect, and a shortstop prospect in Yolfrin Castillo. So as of right now, Castillo is number 7 and Osuna is number 10. Castillo, a lot of upside with him. Rarely strikes out, makes a ton of contact, has some pretty good exit velo as well. Pretty good defender out there. There's a lot of upside here. But, they already got Corey Seager for years to come. They also got Sebastian Walcott in that system. So I think someone like Castillo could be expendable. And then you got Alejandro Osuna, pretty solid outfield prospect for the most part, had 18 home runs this past year. Needs to work on, how he hits against the lefties. Didn't do so hot there, but this is a guy that has some good pop, has some good exit velo this past year. He's decent in center field, could be a corner outfielder down the road, but overall, I think for the Cardinals, you get a couple of high upside position players here. And for the Rangers, they get a shutdown closer. Up next, I want to see Nico Hoerner go to the Yankees or the Mariners. Now, the only way this works is if the Cubs sign Alex Bregman. There has been some steam building towards that possibility as of late. And if they bring him in, he's going to be their third baseman. And I would imagine Matt Shaw would be the second baseman moving forward. One of the top prospects in all of Major League Baseball. He has nothing left to prove in the minor leagues. He should be playing at the major league level. So that means you got to do something with Nico Hoerner. And I think the Yankees would be a good home. They're looking for an answer at third base. You have Oswaldo Cabrera, Oswald Peraza, DJ LeMahieu could be in the mix, but this would be an everyday option to plug in there. He has played third base before. This is a guy with a high contact bat, gets on base a lot, very speedy, good defensively as well. You could put him at second base. Jazz can go back to third. Whatever it may be, I think it would be an awesome addition for the Yankees. And I have a pretty simple trade here, a 1-for-1 swap. Nico Hoerner going to the Yankees. Clark Schmidt going back to the Cubs. He took a big step forward this past year. He showed a lot of good things. I think it would be a nice addition for the Cubs rotation. Javier Assad can go more into that long relief role. He's shown he's pretty solid in that role. I think Clark Schmidt would be good for the Cubs. Now, if not the Yankees, I think the Mariners would also be a great fit. They need something at second base, and they had a lot of problems with strikeouts this past year. Nico Hoerner, like I said, good on base guy, makes a lot of contact. They need that kind of bat in this lineup. Now, a bit of a different trade here. We got a package going back to the Cubs. Harry Ford, the number 6 prospect in their system on Baseball America, Emerson Hancock, and Ashton Izzy, a pitching prospect. Now, Harry Ford, I love Harry Ford. Very athletic, amazing plate discipline. Just needs to do a bit more with the bat. He definitely could be a catcher moving forward, but he's so athletic where he could play some other positions as well. But, you already got Cal Riley here in Seattle, so I feel like Harry Ford could be expendable. Now, we got another guy here, Ashton Izzy, the number 21 prospect. Feels like there's some untapped potential with him. I think the Cubs pitching lab could be a nice fit. And the Mariners, they already have so much pitching as is. And then we got Emerson Hancock. This is a guy with the Mariners. He's on the outside looking in, high draft pick back in 2020, but the Mariners, I think, don't really need him at this point. And like I said, the Cubs, I had Clark Schmidt going there. Feel like they could use a bit more pitching, someone for the back end of the rotation like Hancock, I think could make a lot of sense. Now, if the Cubs don't sign Alex Bregman and Nico Hoerner ends up staying, I think the Mariners should turn to Luis Arise. The Padres, there's been some question marks with the payroll. Arise is due a pretty hefty raise for this coming year. The Padres, they have other guys that they can work into the mix. Maybe they could sign, a cheaper infielder to bring in. But I think Luis Arise would be a very nice fit for the Mariners. Like I said, they need a high contact bat here. Arise would be the perfect table setter to put atop this lineup. But the trade that I have here, Luis Arise going to the Mariners and back to the Padres. We got a reliever in Gabe Spire and Emerson Hancock once again. Like I said, he's on the outside looking in Seattle. The Padres, they could use some more pitching depth there. I think that would be a nice home for him. whatever it is, Nico Hoerner, Luis Arraez, I want to see the Yankees and the Mariners get involved here. Up next, I want to see Michael King go to the Mets. Now, King had a great year this past year after getting traded for Juan Soto last offseason. 31 games, 30 starts, over 170 innings pitched, ERA at 2.95, FIP at a 3.33, good amount of strikeouts, pitched well in the postseason. Now, when it comes to the Padres, there have been some question marks with the payroll over the last couple of years. I know they just figured things out with ownership, but that has been there. If they don't want to sign him to an extension, I say trade him now while his value is high so that way you can get back some young, cost-controlled talent. I think the Mets would be a great fit. Now, they got a lot of depth here. Kadai Senga coming back after missing pretty much all of last year, minus the postseason. Sean Manaea they brought back. You brought in Frankie Montas, Clay Holmes. They got some question marks, though. Montas, the injury history hasn't been great. Clay Holmes is going to be a starter after being a reliever for his whole career. So I feel like you need to bolster the top of the rotation. I think Michael King would be fantastic for them. And I think the Mets got some guys that they could send back and it won't quite hurt them. Now, the deal that I have, Michael King to the Mets, and then we got a prospect, Drew Gilbert, along with David Peterson and Brett Beatty. Now, Drew Gilbert, the number 10 prospect in their system, he had some injuries this past year, but there's a lot of upside with him. A pretty good, well-rounded outfield prospect, good hit tool, has good plate discipline, makes a good amount of contact, very good in the field. He's athletic, has a good arm out there. There could be some upside for the Padres to tap into. Now, also have David Peterson heading back to the Padres here. David Peterson looked pretty good this past year. Has a couple of years of control. He can go back into the Padres rotation. And then we got Brett Beatty. Now, Brett Beatty is pretty much on the outside looking in at this point, right? They brought back Pete Alonso. You got Mark Vientos. I mean, could they work him into the outfield maybe? I don't know. But I think with the Padres, he could have some more opportunities there, especially if they move Luis Arraez, right? You know, you did just bring in Jason Hayward, Connor Joe for left field. So, you know, maybe he could find a way to get in here. You know, they could still use another bat, in my opinion. So maybe he can get a chance. Either way, though, whatever it is, I think Michael King would be great for the Mets. And last but not least, I want to see Dylan Cease go to the Orioles. So back-to-back off seasons in which the Orioles acquire a top-of-the-rotation pitcher. Last year with Corbin Burns, this year with Dylan Cease. So like I said with the Padres, there's been some question marks with the payroll, and Dylan Cease is going to be getting a fat payday next offseason when he becomes a free agent. So I don't think the Padres should hang on to him. I think they should move him. Will they trade both Michael King and Dylan Cease? Maybe hang on to one of them. I say if they trade one, it should be Cease. This guy's been one of the top pitchers in Major League Baseball for a few years now. 33 starts this past year, just under 190 innings pitched, ERA at a 3.47, FIP at a 3.10. Very good amount of strikeouts, some of the best stuff in Major League Baseball. They would definitely get a nice package in return. And I think the Orioles need to beef up the top of the rotation, right? Corbin Burns going to the Diamondbacks, right? You got Zach Eflin, Grayson Rodriguez. You brought in Charlie Morton, Tomoyuki Sagano, but you need a guy at the top of the rotation. I like Eflin, but I think he's more of a 2 in the rotation. Dylan Cease would be the clear-cut number 1. Now, the trade that I have, Dylan Cease going to Baltimore and back to the Padres, they get an everyday outfielder in Heston Kjerstad, who's kind of on the outside looking in right now. The Orioles, they brought in Tyler O'Neill. You still got Cedric Mullins. You got Colton Cowser there. So Heston Kjerstad could be expendable at this point. And then also a couple of pitching prospects, Chase McDermott and Luis De Leon. Chase McDermott is number 5 in their system, and Luis De Leon is number 15. Chase McDermott, good all-around pitching prospect. There's definitely some upside there. Has some good velo. Has a good slider to go along with it. Still needs to throw a bit more strikes, but there's a lot of upside. And then Luis De Leon, same thing. You know, good stuff, but just needs to do better when it comes to throwing strikes. But I would love for Heston Kjerstad to go back to the Padres in this deal. You know, they could use another bat in that lineup, or, you know, I know they got a platoon going with Jason Hayward, Connor Joe, but they could still stick Heston Kjerstad in the DH spot, do a rotation of sort. I think this would be a great trade for both sides. So those are the trades that I want to see. Tell me the trades that you want to see down below in the comments. But everyone, if you can on the way out, hit that like button for me. Subscribe if you're new. We're trying to get to 50K by opening day. But with that said, I'll talk to you next time.